Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the second day of our Sanaa music workshop. We're so excited to have you here. Today we're going to have our class presented. We have Miss Emily Fredrickson in the house, and she's going to be talking about artistry and artistic burnout and how to keep motivated in this in 2021 as an artist. Before we turn it over to Emily, just wanted to shout out a couple donors here. We have the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Foundation. We have the Emerging Philanthropists of New Orleans. We got the 40 Schools in partnership with Vela, the Bornstein family, the Anderson family, and the Cara family. And huge shout out to those organizations and families who donated to us, because this year we're presenting the camp 100% free. And if you are watching online and do enjoy the programming and what we're doing here at Second Line Arts, please go to secondlinearts.org and donate. But without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to the great Miss Emily Fredrickson.
Thanks so much, Greg. How's everybody doing this morning? I know that we're all on mute. Good, thumbs up will work. That's beautiful. Thank you. As Greg said, I am Emily Fredrickson. I am a trombonist, composer, and arts advocate, and I live in New Orleans. And today we're going to be going over a topic that maybe seems a little different. At first, it's going to seem a little uncomfortable, but I just need you to ride it out with me. It's going to be fine. It's going to be a little strange at first, and maybe not like most of the other workshops, but I promise that it's going to be something that is very valuable, especially after you leave the education part of your career. So I think if it's okay with you guys, I know that there are, how many of us? There are 16. So it's too many for everybody to introduce. I would love to talk to all of you at some point, but I am going to randomly select, there's almost 20 of us. I'll use my little 20-sided die to pick a few people to go ahead and introduce yourself. If you could say your name and why you play music. So I'm gonna roll my dice real quick. Number 9. Okay, do we have Jason here? Jason Williams? No? Okay, let's try it again then. Okay, Haywood, can you introduce yourself and say why you play music?
Hi, I'm Haywood St. Cyr, and why I play music. Well, I don't just play music, I make it too. Like, I want to be a world renowned music artist, rapper, singer, etc. And I do it as a form of release and stuff, and a way to get out my emotions and express myself to the world, and to help others too. Like, because music is relatable and it's universal. So like if you listen to my music and you have the same struggle, then like we can connect on that way. So it's a connection too. So yeah.
Beautiful, thank you, Haywood. All right, let's see. Okay, number 13. Oh, Cameron Clark. Let's hear from you. Hey, Cam, you there?
Yeah.
Hey, there we
I'm
go.
Cam. Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I'm Cam. I play trumpet. I just graduated from Loyola, and I think I like to play and just create music in general because like it's just something that's just core to my personality and my soul almost. Just in everything that I do, like I just hear music in everything, whether it's like birds chirping or like a train horn. It's just in my nature to create music. So that's why I do it.
Awesome, thank you. All right, let's see who's next. Okay, we have Valerie.
Hello, I'm Valerie. I'm from Bolivia and I go to Loyola. I make music because it's what I've known and loved my entire life. It's a release and a language.
Beautiful, thank you, Valerie. All right, let's do one more. Do we have, let me scan real quick. Do we have Dominic? No, we don't have Dominic. Okay. Oh, we do have Dominic. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Dominic.
I find learning music to be enjoyable. The act of learning it, yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I have to be honest with you guys. When people would ask me that question, especially early on in my career, I thought the only acceptable answer was I play music because I have to. Um, and that's not a super healthy relationship to music, because then it sort of seems like it's a chore. But I can say today that my answer, I play, I write, I compose, I arrange music because I love it. And that's one thing that I can always rely on. I play it, I write it because I love it. And sometimes my relationship to music has really changed. It used to be because I loved playing the trombone for people, and then I kind of lost that for a little bit. And then it used to be because I love arranging music for a big band, and then I sort of lost interest in big band. So I think the one thing that I can always derive is that I play music because I love it. So we're going to discuss something that's a little bit, a little different. I don't know, maybe different from your normal lectures or workshops, something called burnout. Has anybody, just by show of hands, you can give me a thumbs up or whatever, has anybody ever heard of burnout, known someone that's gone through it, or gone through it yourself? I have. Yeah. Great. Okay. That's definitely a good starting place. I personally did not really know what it was. And I thought for sure, because I'm super smart and I'm really good at, taking care of my stuff and staying on top of everything, that I would never face it because I thought I was immune, and that was not true. And I think it happens to a lot of people, especially artists. And I don't know that we're prepared super well to deal with it. And it actually isn't something that I think a lot of people want to talk about. But unfortunately, I think it's something that, and we'll go over why, but I think it's something that artists are especially susceptible to. So over the next two classes, which is this morning and then Thursday morning, we're going to go over three things. We're going to learn how to recognize the symptoms and patterns that might indicate burnout. And then we're going to go over how to set goals with a different mindset than what you're used to. And then tomorrow, or not tomorrow, Thursday, we're going to go over something that I call having like a well of ideas. So basically, creating a bunch of ideas that you have saved up that you can use when inspiration is low, when creativity seems like it's all gone. Having something saved up and ready, that's kind of key for those moments. So I think all of those things are especially useful for avoiding burnout. And that's ultimately the goal of what we're going to try and go over. So honestly, there's not going to be a lot of right answers. So if I ask for an answer, just kind of give me what's at the top of your head. And I know Zoom is super hard, so don't worry about interrupting. We'll try and make sure that everybody gets a chance to talk, and I'll try and mitigate the interrupting Zoom issues as much as possible, but just kind of go for it when you have a chance. So first, we're going to start. I have to apologize because I put your materials in another folder with my name on it that was not the folder that was shared with you. So you don't actually have to have anything prepared for today. Don't worry. Obviously, I didn't realize that it wasn't in your folder until last night. So all of the references and things that I'm going to talk about today are in that folder. You don't have to open it up now. You don't have to find it right now. But I do want you to know that I'm going to be referencing some material that's kind of scientific, and I'm not a scientist. So I always recommend that if somebody references something, that you go and check out that reference for yourself, because sometimes people interpret it differently than you would. And I think it's extremely valuable to have practice referencing things that people have referencing them for yourself. So it's just a book and a podcast, or two books and a podcast. They're both pretty short. The podcast is really easy to listen to as well. So if you'd like to listen to that after today, that would be great. But we'll start where all of our music is supposed to start, with emotions. I don't know if I've ever had a great definition for what emotions are, but according to this book, and this is the one that I'm referencing, Burnout, emotions are chemicals in your body. I don't like that because I don't really like the idea that I have to deal with emotions. So when I hear that they're actually just chemical reactions in my body, that makes it a little bit easier for me to understand and deal with, because Emotions are just not something you can really nail down and explain, and it's not the same for everybody. So when I heard that, it actually made me have like a little bit better relationship with the concept of emotions. And that's good because musicians were essentially training to use our bodies as vehicles for emotion. And I think because of that, more so, artists are extremely susceptible to burnout because we're required to not only process our own emotions, but then refine the process into a highly skilled performance and do it for a living. So taking a second to digest all of that, we have to process our own emotions and refine it into an extremely skilled performance or writing, and do it for an audience and make money off of it. That seems like a little unreasonable. I mean, it seems like a lot to me at least, but it's what we've chosen to do. And I think most importantly, when we think about how overwhelming that all sounds, is to go back to our why. Why are we doing this? So moving on a little bit more than that, can anybody give me like a short definition of what you think burnout is, or if you've experienced it before? Just anybody, you can unmute, just raise your hand or whatever works.
I think burnout comes from like doing something that you may have a passion for or a love for just too long. And then you kind of feel like, is this the only thing that I'm capable of? Like, is this all that I do? So you kind of have those thoughts of like, let me like maybe pick up something else, or like maybe take a step back from it for a while, because you're just like, I need to take a break so that my entire personality does not revolve around like this one thing. I think that's where it kind of stems from.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Does anybody have any other aspects that they want to share about what they think burnout is? Go ahead, Matthew.
Burnout kind of comes from like you're playing music and you're doing like some of the same thing, but of course yourself to do something else. And then sometimes you have self-doubt and kind of leads to like periods of like laziness and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I definitely think that the laziness is what I equated with burnout too. That's what I started recognizing it as. I thought I was just being lazy. So the definitions from this book, and then also from scientists who study professional burnout, this is kind of a spin on it, artistic burnout. The signs of it are, the first sign is emotional exhaustion, decreased sense of accomplishment, and depersonalization. And I'll take a second to explain that. Emotional exhaustion is the fatigue that comes from carrying too much for too long. So yeah, I think that's something that we can all recognize. Is just like, okay, well, I'm a little tired of this, or maybe I've done too much, maybe I took on too much. Decreased sense of accomplishment. This one hit home for me. The unconquerable sense of futility, feeling that nothing you do makes any difference. Whew, that's tough. That's definitely tough. And I feel like that, especially when I was in school. I felt like it got to the point where I was just like not doing anything right. And then the depersonalization is depletion of empathy, caring, and compassion, which is so dangerous. And it's really important to being a musician, is to have empathy, caring, and compassion. That's a super important part about what makes us relatable, and how we, make our message through our music. So
Hey, Emily, what
yeah,
what
go ahead.
about like feeling like you want to quit, or feeling like there's no point? I don't know if some of the cats can talk about this, but for me personally, when there was the pandemic and there's nowhere to play, all of a sudden there's like also no point to practice, or there's no point to even create. Maybe some of the men and women in class can talk about if they felt like that before.
Yeah, please, I'd love you to share.
Yeah, I think I
Valerie,
can.
okay, Cam.
Yeah, I think I can touch on what Darren was talking about, because definitely during the pandemic, when there was like no gigs, or like I had gigs and they just were like canceled, I was like, all right, like, is this like a viable way to like make a living? You know what I mean? Especially like if the gig industry is like as unstable as it was like during the pandemic, I was like, is this something I necessarily like want to continue doing? I was like, do I want to go do like business stuff or whatever? So yeah, definitely that feeling of like quitting is definitely also an aspect to burnout.
Yeah. How about you, Valerie?
I think it happens when you like don't know how to balance learning between like expressing your creativity, because there's just so much time to be spent sitting down learning an instrument, learning theory, practicing skill. But then if you stress yourself too much with that and you don't make room for like your own expression, it can be a bit like a burnout, I think.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they're right, huh? It's hard, man, and it's you guys are just at the beginning of your career. Me and Emily and Greg, we've been out here for a minute, and it's kind of cyclical.
Hmm.
Like it can be anything. It could be you broke up with your girlfriend or boyfriend, your dog died,
Hmm.
they didn't have the right sandwich at the damn grocery store, and like anything can kind of trigger, uh, you know, burnout or some kind of emotional depression that can lead to burnout. What do you
Yeah.
think, Emily?
Yeah, absolutely. Mason, I saw a hand. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think burnout can also come from sort of forgetting why you started in the first place, because
Hmm.
that can often happen if you're like, especially in like music school or doing stuff where like you have so many assignments, doing all this work, and like you realize how much work you have to put in to get where you want to be. And if you only focus on that work and like what you have to do or what you're having to do, and you forget like why you even do it in the first place, and you're gonna burn out because you're gonna be like, what's the point?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for transitioning into that, because that's where I was, and why especially I wanted to talk to people who were just kind of starting or coming out of college, because I left my undergrad thinking I was not going to be playing music again because I was so burnt out. And I moved to New Orleans to not play music, which obviously didn't work. It's kind of a hard place to do that. Um, but I think that the important part of it is, yes, remembering your why, absolutely, but also being okay with your why changing. I was not okay with it changing. I didn't I didn't like the idea that maybe I didn't have to play music. Maybe there's another reason why I like this. Maybe it's okay that my why is that I love it, and that's enough. Go ahead, Pef. I see your hand.
I just want to include, I feel like burnout for me is mostly about impatience. There's that, super common cliche, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. And, when you really want to, I remember like there was a point in time when I really wanted to learn how to kickflip on a skateboard. Still don't know how to kickflip, but I just wanted to get there, and I kept trying to do it. And the more I tried to do it, the worse I got at it, until I was just like, I hit the ground and I was just like, I'm so done skateboarding. Like, just like, that feeling where it's just like, you want to get there, but you're not even living within, the process of getting there. And it
Yes.
causes that burnout.
Yes, you actually, thank you, Pef. It's good to see you. You actually transitioned this perfectly into the next part of this. So the idea of burnout, it stems from something called exhaustion. And exhaustion, as we all know, is a physical condition. But it's sort of hard to remember that emotions are also physical conditions. They are chemicals in your body, and they can cause exhaustion. So when I hear emotional exhaustion, I'm like, okay, well, that's whatever. That's just hippie, whatever. I can get through emotions. I can handle that. No, emotions are chemicals that are happening in your body, and they can cause the same exhaustion that happens when you're skateboarding. And you get to the point where your body just physically cannot do the kickflip anymore. You have to start over the next day. Just give yourself rest. But that is exactly what happens. And then you said you get stuck in the process. You get anxious because you're stuck in the middle of it. That is literally and chemically what happens with emotions. You have to go through the beginning, middle, and end of them to fully process them. And this is something that is sort of like, again, please reference, because I am not a scientist, but from what I've understood, it's an evolutionary reaction that our body has to stress. We have emotions so that our body responds appropriately. So when we're stressed, those emotions actually come from basically avoiding danger, avoiding enemies. If we go way back to the times when we were running from animals that were trying to kill us, those types of things. So the emotions are actually something that we have to physically process, and our body's response to them are still the same as it was when we had emotions from just being afraid of something. So to process them, we actually have to go through the physical response of feeling like we got away from whatever was endangering us, and then we have to go through the response of safety, making sure that we feel safe. I know this is a little bit complicated in relation to music, but when we talk about how stressful playing this music is, when we talk about how the ideas that we get on stage and we bare our souls every night, we're literally forcing ourselves through emotions over and over again. But I don't know that we always are able to successfully process what they feel like. And it can lead to that exhaustion and that feeling like you're getting stuck and that feeling like you're impatient. So does anybody have any ideas? Or can you tell me a little bit about how emotions play into your practice? Has someone ever told you, oh, play with more emotion? Or how does that play into what you do as a musician? Go ahead, Brandon.
Brandon, you're muted.
Oh, yep.
Can you hear me? All right, cool.
Yeah.
There you
There
go.
you go.
All right.
Thanks.
So it's kind of it's a little strange for me because um, a lot of us were in college or high school or getting out of college. We've been taught pretty much our whole lives almost, like not even just music, but in a sense of an academic standpoint, we have to kind of learn a certain way or follow a certain roadmap of just learning fundamentals. And then as soon as we get out, everything is just like slapped to the face. Because it's like going to school and then going to the bandstand, like you're just sitting in with the band, or you're just like you're going to like an orchestral rehearsal. It's just like even if you read music, there's just like so much emotion and all of that, like expression. That stuff doesn't just get taught; you learn it,
Mm-hmm.
and it takes time. And when we think about how we express the music or whatever was written or anything, it it's not going to be the same as you first played it earlier. So it's just the so we first hear that stuff, it's just like, well, how can my brain process what's going on? All of this stuff is different. And it's just something you learn and you learn and you learn. And it's hard to handle like when you first like experience it. So it was tough for me at least. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It was extremely tough for me as well. I think absolutely what you said about things changing so rapidly from an educational setting to just being out there. That was a huge emotional switch because now not only is it went from being your grades to now it's my rent. Like this is feeling pretty serious, that pressure is another thing that builds up external emotion that happens off stage. And then you get on stage and you're right, absolutely processing the music and how it changes emotionally as you play it. And then also, right, just like having to manage having a great technical performance on top of that. It's so much. It's absolutely overwhelming. And I don't think, at least in my educational experience, there wasn't a class on like emotion 101, how to handle stuff. There wasn't anything like that. So that's part of it that's like, oh, it's totally up to you. Go ahead, Jordan.
I personally say that as artists and as people, that everything comes down to perception and interpretation, because what somebody feels is melancholy may not be what melancholy is to somebody else. And when it comes to being in a big band and you're trying to convey this emotion for the writer's pleasure, you know, you have to do it because it's what they want. But when it comes down to you being a solo artist, I feel like no one can really tell you how to play with emotion because it's how you interpret it and how your body and mind processes it. So it may not come off as sad, happy, mad to somebody else. But if that's how you feel and that's how you feel like it's the right way to express it, then I feel like that's what's most important. And with that being said, there's also ways you can better the ways you convey emotions, because I'm always trying to better the ways that I do things. And I feel like the more you find yourself through your music and through your talents and your art and your life, then the better you'll get at conveying the emotions that you feel.
Yes, there's so much there. Thank you. Thank you. That and emotions, like you can go back, I'm sure some of us already have, and I continually do this, go back to things that you've played for a very long time and have a completely different relationship to it as you develop as a musician, as you develop as a human. So, and I agree, the idea, oh, play with emotion, the writer wants us to convey this message. The beautiful thing about playing improvisational music is that really the message is in your hands, and we sort of remove the sometimes the perceived notion of lyrics when we're playing instrumental music or if we're scatting and things like that. Like that lets us really remove any other type of external notion of what the music is about and make it our own. But yeah, you're right, it does come down to learning and how to process your own emotions. And the last thing I wanted to hear when I was in school was it takes time, because I didn't want to have to take time. I wanted it now because there are so many people already better than me. I'm already behind. It's just a recipe for things kind of getting to the point of exhaustion again.
Hey, Emily,
Yeah,
I want to. I do have a question for you and for
sure.
the all the cats in the class. Like previously, a few minutes ago, we kind of talked about uh, processing your feelings leading up to the bandstand, because there's always that voice in your head, and you guys can tell me if you experience this, that before you even get to the bandstand, you have these feelings maybe of self-doubt or over criticism. And what are some ways that you kind of, because that can kind of lead you down a dark path too, what are some ways that you guys can use to kind of get out of your head and to get into the zone, into your safe space to really be creative? Any volunteers? What about John? We haven't talked.
How y'all doing? I'm sorry. Um, my name is John. I go to Warren Easton, and yeah. Oh, and I play drums and multiple instruments. But I do have a lot of self doubt when I'm playing like the drums or playing any instruments. I do have a lot of self doubt, and I do be self conscious about a lot of things. But to get into my safe space, to be honest, I just close my eyes and breathe and take a deep breath and just let everything go. And also, I'm very religious, so I pray before I do anything, and then I just play and then hope for the best. That's how I honestly feel in my safe space and just feel relieved before I do anything.
Nice. Yeah, I like that. What do you do, Emily?
Whew, this is a tough one. John, thank you so much for your answer. You guys are just transitioning to the next part of everything so beautifully. Thank you. You said the next answer already. So you guys are super intuitive. I love it. What do I do? So the thing that I I have a really hard time saying nice things to myself. I'm usually, my default is just, let me just remind myself how awful I am as often as I can. Not not a good default for sure. The thing that I've come to realize is the way that I can be nicer to myself is that I pretend like I'm saying something to my younger self, something that I needed to hear when I was growing up. And I can be nicer to her, that version of me. I can't really process how to be super kind to myself all the time, but I do know how to be nicer to a younger version of myself. So if I get into that negative space where I'm beating myself up, I go back and I think about, okay, what did I need to hear and how does that affect me now? It's probably what I need to hear now too. It's just easier to say it to a person that I feel a little bit more removed from, somebody who I don't feel as critical of, and somebody who I've forgiven. So that's my current way of doing it. And then exactly what John said about breathing, that is absolutely critical. I'm a trombonist. Breathing is obviously necessary to play, but I tend to hold my breath in other scenarios and I'll run out of breath just because I'm nervous. So I realize that I hold a lot of tension that way. So breathing, making sure that all of the functions of my body are responding to the breath and just focusing on breathing. Sometimes it's a lot to focus on the music, to focus on performance, being on stage, all of those aspects that can create a little bit of tension. If I can just let it go and focus on breath, absolutely necessary. Anybody else have some different coping mechanisms?
Donald had his hand raised.
Yeah, go for it.
What you got?
I feel like for me, like when I'm like at a jam session or like gigging, I feel like one, like I try to get into like that mental space that like it's just me. I mean, that helps, but like clearly there's like people, you know, around you listening to you. So I feel like you have to like come to like a realization that like if you're playing for like other people, or like if you're playing for like, oh, I'm just playing to like, you know, like show off or like something like that, like I feel like you got to play like in an honest way. So like if you're playing like honestly to yourself, you know, playing the things that like you want to play, I feel like people will like see that and be okay with that, you know. So you just gotta accept yourself first, and then that helps, you know, like release some like insecurities of like maybe you think like, oh, what are they thinking of me?
Mhm.
But like as long as you're honest, then like people will be, you know, cool with what you do.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I definitely think that that's evident as, especially as you grow and play with more people and get to know people like more personally on a musical level, that as that relationship develops, I think you can hear honesty in the music too. And sometimes honesty is hard. Sometimes it's that you don't really understand or have like a really deep relationship to the music that you're playing. So you gotta kind of find ways to make your relationship to the music personal, even if it's something that you might not want to be playing. Going to your own space is something beautiful. I've definitely found myself closing my eyes and imagining, like, what if only good things came out of my horn? And what if I didn't train wreck, you know, or whatever the worst case scenario that I always think of is, I think of the best, try and think of the best case scenario. What if the right person was at this gig who called me to do the gig of my dreams right now? What if I only played the exact things that I wanted to play? So personalizing it that way too, and like making it a little internal, right? Like imagining that you're not playing for everybody else, but you're playing from your own honest space. Definitely. That's a beautiful way to do that. I think part of what we do on stage is we process emotions, right? I definitely heard people say like put more feeling into it, put more emotion into it, right? That's no easy task, and we can't fully process emotions on stage either. So while we may express, I think the part of it then that's really helped me is understanding that the expression of the emotion is part of it, but then completing the emotion is actually a physical response. So there are some ways that the book lists and things that I've had a lot of success with, especially relating to stress. I tend to take on huge projects and then get like really sick afterwards. I'm a migraine sufferer, and I can almost always count on turning in a project and having a migraine immediately after. I just thought it was my way of living, but it turns out it's actually my body's response to stress, and it's not sustainable. Do not recommend. But these are the things that have definitely helped me, and I'd like to go over some of them with you, but also I want to hear some ideas that you have. The concept of emotion is that you have to physically process it. So the first and most efficient way is to actually go do physical activity. What it does is it tells your body that you're processed it, you've gone through it, and there's a lot of other chemicals and hormones and things that happen in your body when you do exercise. That is the most efficient way to do it. I know that we don't always have the opportunity to just like play on stage and then go for a run afterwards. So that's not the only way. It's not and I know that I'm not a runner, but I found other things that I enjoy doing. So I know that physical activity is not always the best, most accessible response. The other one is, I know Greg loves running. Greg will have to tell you about how many bugs he ate running last night. Um, so the most accessible option after going through stress is breathing. Exactly what John said. That is your body's response. Like that is one thing that triggers your body to be like, okay, I'm safe. I'm not actually in danger. I have control over my respiratory system. And going to a good way to combine both of those options is actually having a yoga practice where you can physically exert yourself and practice breathing at the same time. There are a few more on this list, but I would like to hear from you guys. What are some things that you do to process your emotion?
How about we hear from Anthony Beavers?
I was actually about to type this out, but last semester when I was at college, I did try to start working out more and with like a few friends. It didn't last the whole semester, sadly, but I feel like it did help just going to get out and do physical activity. Um, Even though I did more of all around rather than running, which is what I used to do when I was just a kid. But I feel like it did help a little bit just to feel better.
Absolutely. I love that. Yeah, man. How
Yeah,
about
definitely.
Idri? Let's see.
Um, let's see. To process emotion. Uh, Usually when it comes to processing emotion, I turn to music, whether it's listening to a song that's hype or listening to a song that's like, get you in your feelings. I use music to process it because, it's the way that I would like to communicate with people. So just having music there. And then when it comes to like physically, I would try to make music, whether it's going to the piano or just like playing my horn and trying to process what I feel through it.
Yeah,
Nice. Love
that's
that.
beautiful. I think that's actually something on the list that the book recommends too. Creative expression is absolutely something that you can do to process emotion. And it seems kind of counterintuitive if your creative expression is what's causing your stress and your emotion. So I think how it interprets for us and how it works for me is that I do something creatively expressing myself that I don't have any judgment on. It's not my trombone. It's not me writing music or playing the trombone or playing piano or things that I do um, that I'm hypercritical of. It is like trying watercolor. Um, it is like just doing. I'm trying to remember the one thing that I tried to do this summer. Oh, this worked for me. I like to build Legos. You know, there are some things that just like I don't have any judgment on, but it is a creative expression. I think we get so wrapped up in the idea that this is our love and this is our passion, and sometimes it's also our frustration and our stress, and we're trying to make it all work in one. So I think having some other spaces that we can go to is very necessary. Some other things that I would not have thought of that the book recommends and have worked, some of them have worked, some of them have not. For me personally, they recommend a positive social interaction, going to talk to somebody that you feel comfortable with. That can trigger everything to feel safe, right? Laughter. This is one thing that they said is not necessarily just like, oh, haha, that's funny, but like full body laughter, like putting on your favorite comedian and just like cry laughing, which is another thing that they recommended, crying. It's not my favorite thing, but I know a lot of friends who that is exactly what they need to finish processing the emotion. And that is technically why your body cries. Go ahead, John.
How you doing? To be honest, one thing I do instead of doing like physical activity or anything such as like moving, I actually got a space. Well, not a safe space in my house, but actually I just go outside and honestly just like look at the world and just think back on things I did or just think back about what's going on in life and just slow down instead of like moving and going faster. I just slow down and just think about what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Slowing down is definitely necessary, and sometimes it's very hard to do. I think my inclination is definitely sorry, uh, is definitely to speed up because I want to get away from it, right? But slowing down is absolutely something that is necessary. Go ahead, Pef.
Yeah, I think like I have this great routine that really gets me like sort of going. You're talking about exercise. I'm fortunate enough to have found like an apartment that has like a private pool, and next to the pool is actually a shed. And so every morning I'll go out, I'll jump in the pool, wake up, and then I'll go in the shed and shed my horn. And when I get tired of doing it, when I start to, quote unquote burn out, maybe maybe an hour later or so, I'll go and jump in the pool, do some laps, get back out, and then continue playing my horn. And it just it keeps me going. Like,
That
you know,
that is the most literal interpretation of it. You have an actual shed and you are actually going to do physical activity when you burn out. All of that is super beautiful. I see, hold on, Anthony, I know you're trying to raise your hand. Go ahead.
I feel like the number one thing for me is like no matter what you're doing, like even if it's something you don't particularly like or something you're interested in, just doing things with friends.
Yeah.
Just trying to hang out with people that I guess make you happy. And
Yeah.
no matter what, that seems to cheer me up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I know we have to transition, but I want to make sure that I give you guys your stuff for Thursday. So just to go over again the things that the book recommends and things that I have loved trying. The list is working out, breathing, positive social interaction, laughter, physical affection, crying, or creative expression. So I think if it's okay with you guys, for Thursday morning, I'd like you guys to, and you don't have to share this with me, but before Thursday, I want you to come up with an action plan of how to incorporate some of these things into your daily practice. And no, don't say Emily is asking me to cry every day. Not at all. I want you to pick one of these that works for you. And then I want you to come up with sort of like an emergency strategy. Like, what are some things I can try when I'm really not feeling well? And I want you to definitely try some of these that you normally wouldn't. I normally would not cry because I don't like to, but getting myself to the point where I recognized that as a valuable form of my body's expression was very necessary and helped me ultimately discover what works best for me. So first thing, come up with your daily practice of doing some of these things so that you can process all of that emotion that we're supposed to be playing every single day. 2, come up with an emergency strategy. And then 3, if you can, bring either paper or note cards, about 60 of them, for Thursday. And I put it in your folder too. But we're going to write some things on there, having just even like if you just want to cut squares of paper. 60 total, 60, yeah. I just get some note cards, like a pack of them from like Target or whatever. If you can't do that, don't worry. I'll come up with a way to randomize it on Google Docs, but the activity on Thursday works a little bit better if you have physical things to sort through. But if not, do not worry. I am not creating any extra stress. This is the anti-stress part of your week. Okay, but I think that wraps up my end. I don't know if we have any time for additional questions, but
Can I chime in for a second? I can't figure out how to raise my hand on Zoom. I think Zoom every day. I just wanted to throw in too, therapy. As artists, I've gone to therapy several times in my life, and I know there's like a huge social stigma against it, but as we're moving through time and in 2021, I feel like it's more common to talk about, how everyone is, therapy is an incredible thing. And for anyone who is ever encountering negative thoughts or feelings or emotions, or like, noticing patterns in your life where you're like, hey, this keeps happening, or whatever, I would highly recommend that you seek out a therapist, someone to talk to, someone that you trust. And I can say, just in my personal experience, it's been one of the most beneficial, positive experiences and journeys in my life. And I hope that I would suggest and recommend that to anyone who's going through anything, in their lives. And there could be no negativity that comes out of it. But also as artists, I feel a lot of us, we kind of like, we associate our artistic accomplishments with our value as a human being. And we are not our art. Like, our art is something that exists separate of who we are as people. And so I know it's a hard boundary to draw as artists. We always want to, like, when we play a good gig, I'm a good person. If I play a bad gig, I'm a bad person. And I think as artists, if we can create that boundary in our lives, we're like, hey, no matter how the gig went, I'm still a good person. And the good gigs come, the bad gigs come, and they go. And as long as we can maintain that center with all the techniques and suggestions Emily was listing, those are all wonderful things. And finally, also, I just like to announce we'd be having a pool party at Pef's house at the end of the 2 weeks.
Yes, yeah.
Let's go. Shed is
No,
pool.
seriously, everyone's invited. Everyone.
That's
I'm
amazing.
not even joking. I'm not even
That's
joking.
amazing. Thank you so much for being candid about that, Greg. I also highly recommend therapy. I see a therapist as well, and it's helped me immensely with my relationship to my music, to my friends, to my family, all of that. I think let's remove the stigma from it as much as possible. It has helped me so much, and that is absolutely part of the positive social interaction, having a person that you can go to that you trust. Sometimes it's really hard to find that. So that is absolutely what's helped me, especially over the past year, for sure. So thank you, Greg.
Yeah, Emily, thank you so much. And
Yeah, absolutely.
thank you guys